Boy, tonight we got a good show. We have from St. Elsewhere, a very lovely actress, nominated, I think, for the 4th time for an Emmy. Miss Christina Pickles is with us. Funny gentleman, comedian John Mendoza is on the show. And a young man who did something I don't understand why and how he did it, but he is alive to tell us about it. His name is Ed Gillette, and he's left from Point Monterey in a kayak to the island of Maui in the Hawaiian Islands. And he made it all by himself in a kayak. Now, isn't a kayak one of those where you one paddle? Would you do that?
No.
You won't go to Catalina on your yacht. Man went to... Anyway, stay where you are. We'll be right back. Okay. Yummy, yum, yum. You bring some of your...
Yes.
You got to bring some of your produce in this week from your backyard garden. It'll be like a farm co-op around here. Now, my first guest is a young man who I mentioned in the monologue who set out very quietly on June the 25th from Monterey, California, in a kayak, alone, to paddle across 2,400 miles of ocean to reach Hawaii. He was overdue. He became lost. He ran out of food. Spent 64 days at sea. Walked up on a beach in Maui last Thursday. Would you welcome Ed Gillette? You know, when you first hear about this, you say, that is crazy. Well, to do what you tried to do. And what possessed you?
It was as hard a trip as I thought I could do successfully.
Yeah.
And the currents and winds are favorable to Hawaii, so I knew as a sailing trip it was a straightforward thing to do. It's just a long, long kayak trip.
2,400 miles. Now, kayak is just with the paddle.
Right. Well, it was big enough. It takes the right kind of kayak. It had to be big enough to carry all of my gear.
Right.
And small enough for me to be able to push as a kayak. But someone had to get there first, and they used canoes.
It's never been done before, as far as you know?
It's never been done.
This kind of a trip?
The Hawaiians got there by canoes.
Yeah.
But it's never been done by a kayaker, no.
That is incredible. What had you done before this?
Well, I've done maybe 10,000 miles of ocean paddling, 30,000 miles of sailing, which was a real valuable experience.
Right.
But the ocean paddling, I've done the west coast of South America, from the Magellan Strait up to Colombia.
Yeah.
Both sides of Baja, the Inside Passage, Glacier Bay to Seattle.
You've had quite a life.
Yeah.
Something you've always wanted to do, this kind of adventure?
I wanted to get offshore in the kayak. I wanted to cross the ocean.
Now, you said you had to have room for what you have aboard. What'd you have aboard? Now, you didn't want to take it, I understand, originally.
Right.
A radio or something, or some kind of communication gear?
Yeah, I had a satellite transmitting beacon that would let everyone know where I was, and I didn't want to take it because I knew it would fail, and it did. And it failed after about 12 days, which increased the concern on everybody's part.
In other words, you could not contact anyone, and they couldn't contact you.
And when that failed, they thought, for a while, people tracked me for 12 days.
Yeah.
And when it failed, they thought the worst had happened. So it increased the paranoia about the
Now, how about navigation? I
navigated with a sextant, taking sun sights, and I knew where I was within a mile.
Right.
I think I was going slow enough that I was painfully aware of where I was all the time. In fact...
Yeah, now, what kind of time would you make in a kayak with a single paddle? Obviously, you can't paddle continuously. You have to rest, of course, sleep.
Right, I paddled... Well, that's what took me so long. That's why I was 3 or 4 days late. I said the trip would take 40 to 60 days.
Right.
The trade winds weren't blowing very strongly this year, so the trip was a lot slower.
Right.
But I made, on a day when there was no wind at all, I made 20 miles. On a day with good wind, I could make 60. And I paddled 12 to 16 hours, whatever it took, to make the mileage.
You must have great upper body strength.
Yeah, my legs atrophied a little bit, but my upper body's strong, yeah.
Now, provisions. What'd you have to take on a trip like this?
Carried 60 days worth of food, backpacking, freeze-dried type food. And then for fresh water, which is the real key to survival, I used a reverse osmosis water maker. I could make fresh water from salt water.
Oh, I see. Did you ever get scared? Did you have any moments where you thought you weren't going to make it?
Yeah, I thought for a while I'd miss the islands. In fact, I got caught the last 10 days or so. I was very nervous about missing the islands. I was caught in a northerly current and thought I was headed for Japan.
A little further along, right?
Yeah, well, another 1,000 miles or so.
Yeah.
More than I had food for. So I decided to write a will, in fact.
That's what somebody told me.
In case I knew the boat would be found. I knew the boat would take care of itself, but I didn't think I could live that long. And it was really a few moments of
That's a dicey situation.
Yeah, and then I adopted the philosophy of Scarlett O'Hara. Tomorrow's another day. I just said I'll wait and see.
Did you run out of food?
I did, but the wind shifted, fortunately, and I made it to the island of Maui 3 or 4 days late. I was hungry, but okay.
Well, we're going to come back, and we got some still pictures you took, I guess, on the trip, and I guess a picture of your wife as you were departing, and then we'll show them the kayak itself, okay?
Great.
We'll take a break. We'll come in right back. Okay, we're back. We're talking with Ed Gillette. So you got to Maui just last Thursday, but there was no welcoming party because nobody expected you, right?
No, I arrived at dawn and just at first light. I couldn't walk when I got there. My legs had atrophied somewhat, so I was...
People thought you had lost by that time and weren't going to make it, or what?
Yeah, there were stories in the newspapers that I was overdue at sea.
So you just landed by yourself at dawn?
Just landed, couldn't walk, didn't know how to get the boat up, and I was reeling around like a drunken person. There was another drunk on the beach, and he helped me. Really?
That's because of no exercise, I assume, yeah.
Right. About the same. My legs had the same deterioration as someone who wore casts for that length of time. And he helped me drag the boat up. And then the first thing I could do was think breakfast, you know. So I was really hungry. So I went into a motel lobby and bought $22 worth of junk food. Haagen-Dazs ice cream, candy bars, just raked the shelves.
Jelly donuts, all that stuff?
All that stuff.
Yeah.
I was sitting on the beach eating that, and I was really happy. I was reading a news magazine. And the reporter who'd written the Overdue at Sea story drove by in his truck. It's a small island, and he said, God, that looks like that kayak, you know. And he pulled up and he said, I just wrote about you. Are you the guy? And he approached me very gingerly as though I might be deranged. And
that's strange. What a great story. These pictures here. Now, what is this?
That was my pet mahi fish. Traveled with me.
Right.
And I ate him eventually, but...
Really?
Well...
Look, folks, it's a cruel world. It's not like a dog. It doesn't get your slippers and
I knew him.
Like
he had a pink spot on his forehead. I knew him.
You notice you said pet, though, and then people, no. What are you trailing behind the kayak here that's up in the air?
Yeah, that's ahead. When I had good wind, sometimes I used a parafoil kite to aid the boat, and it kept me from slowing down between... it blew me along a little faster. That's what I looked like.
You don't look too good here.
No.
I mean, you look a little ragged.
You can see the deterioration in my hands. My hands really took a beating on that trip. A lot of dead skin on there.
Good Lord. Now, this is...
That's Maui at dawn.
Maui at dawn.
A little camera shake, but that's what I saw. And that island, I smelled
After 64 days.
You think it's a long plane flight. You ought to take a kayak.
That's really incredible. What are you doing here? There's just...
I'm just taking a self-portrait.
How did you sleep? How on earth did you sleep in the kayak? Because you're going to see the kayak in just a moment.
I crawled down inside and went to sleep. I covered the boat with a tarp, and you'll see I had a lid made, which didn't work at all. So I just stuck my finger up and made a tent out of the tarp and let the water shed.
Is this now on Maui?
Yeah, that's on Maui. That's the amount of gear I had, minus food and water. I could cram a lot of stuff in there. I had about 600 pounds of gear in the boat. For sleeping, that's a flotation chamber, a collar I put on the side of the boat, on both sides, for sleeping. And that stabilized the boat enough for me to get a good night's sleep.
Yaw and roll over? Mm-hmm. That's a fascinating story. I can't imagine attempting something like this. Now, they've brought the kayak out here. It's fairly large. You think of a kayak normally about, what, 10 or 12, but this is a little larger.
Most touring kayaks are 16 to 18 feet. This one's 20 feet.
20 feet. And it was flown out by...
Delta
Airlines, and we're very delighted that they're here. This kayak could have been in Cleveland. No.
My light, let me say.
Humor, shame on me.
Our luggage, Delta got the kayak here fine. Our luggage went on another airline, and it didn't arrive.
Okay.
We're still looking for that. You guys better find it.
One for Delta. Let's take a look at this one. No, it doesn't look all... Let's go... where do you want it, Bobby? In back of this?
Yeah. Yes.
We'll walk around in back here. You know, somebody would say this is fairly large, but the ocean is huge.
Well, it's just over 20 feet. It was designed as a double kayak. This is the forward cockpit normally.
Right.
I wanted to use a boat that was a true kayak. You know, some people do an ocean voyage and they build a boat that's not really what
this is like a commercially made, if you went down and bought a kayak.
Standard stock kayak.
So this is where you spent 64 days?
Yep. Slept down inside. Here's a compass. bilge pump. I got up 3 or 4 times every night and pumped the boat out.
Right.
Used the standard kayak paddle most all the way.
That's it.
That's it.
For 2,400 miles, you sit in here?
Wore a spray skirt, which covered the cockpit here. So
Where did
no
you keep
water
the
could-
provisions now? Just up in...
We've got watertight bulkhead here
Right.
and hatch here. It's like the Titanic,
Yeah.
you know, in that sense. It can't sink. Foot-controlled rudder.
Foot control rudder. And now you only had one. What would have happened if you'd have lost the paddle?
I had 2 spares.
Oh, I see. Okay. That isn't good. Would you,
I wasn't going to resort to swimming until much later in the trip.
would you make a trip like this again?
That particular trip, that's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. you
What's
know.
your what's your next venture?
I'd like to write about it.
Yeah. Well, really, it's nice having you here, and I congratulate you. It's a great personal
Thanks, Johnny.
accomplishment.
I appreciate it.
Good to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. I can't. You know, when you hear about that, you really cannot imagine somebody attempting something like this. I say, you've got a boat, you know, with a captain, and Catalina is a big journey. Oh, ho, straight ahead. I'll be on the fantail, Captain. Man is sitting there going this way. I don't understand that. We'll be right back with John Mendoza and Christina Pickles. Stay where you are.